took a photo of a bathroom floor. You just might be a quilter. You take your vacations near a fabric store. You just might be a quilter. When planning a house with your loving spouse, you can't explain the laundry chute beside the door. You got more fabric than food, but you still want more. You just might be a quilter. If every sewing shop in town knows your name, you just might be a quilter. Shopping's never canceled by a hurricane. You just might be a quilter. You're out in the car and there's a little crash. Don't call your husband first about the smash. You call your quilting friend to come and hide the stash. You just might be a quilter.
The first thing people think of when you tell them that you're a quilter is that they say, oh, my grandmother made a quilt that I had when I was a kid that's on my bed.
Quilting is thought of as a very traditional pastime. It's not. It's morphed into many, many different things over the last 20 or 30 years.
You just might be a quilter.
Hollis, quilt man. I bow down to thee. I have seen thy fabric designs, and they are magnificent.
Hollis is certainly a rock star within the quilting world. I've been called a rock star within the quilting world. I certainly think Carol's a rock star within the quilting world.
When you're a movie star, you get your name in lights. And when you're a textile designer, you get your name on the part of the fabric that they cut off and throw into the trash.
Well, the International Quilt Association Festival in Houston is probably the best place to see today's leading quilts, and especially art quilts.
The International Quilt Festival at Houston is the biggest show every year, and I am told that most years it's the biggest convention in Houston. That blows people's mind when I tell them that, but it is true. And it's generally over 50,000.
When I try to describe the Houston Quilt Festival, it's 11 football fields. Don't plan on coming and staying just for one day because you'll never make it. We do everything bigger in Texas. The George R. Brown Convention Center is a huge building.
It'll be a spectacular event. It's like going to the circus.
You know, when we had the World Series, we had to do a lot of juggling around to make it all fit. Quilters may be the only people who hope the Astros never go to the World Series.
They all come wearing their quilted jackets, their quilted vests. They wear their art, if you will. They're particularly known by our staff for their sweet tooth.
During the quilt festival this year, the pumpkin cupcakes did really well. As soon as they came out of the oven, the manager came back and said, "Oh, we need some more, we need some more." It was fabulous, it went well.
It seems that from sunrise to sundown, they're in the convention floor, they're in the classrooms. It's hard to wedge yourself through those aisles.
It's huge.
I'm a traditionalist, yes.
So am I, but I like some of the art quilts. I am in awe of art quilters, and I'd like to aspire to that.
It makes both of us, I know, very proud and humbled to realize that something that we created out of cloth, thin cloth to begin with, has now become the largest show in the United States.
I have long had a fantasy of winning one of the big awards in Houston. I think of it as the Academy Awards of the quilting world, and I have practiced my speech many times. I would like to thank the Academy and my mother and my father and every quilt store I've ever bought fabric from.
The Best of Show Award is a $10,000 cash award.
For Best of Show, the quilt has to have everything. It has to have excellent workmanship, it has to have beautiful design, it has to have composition. For me, of course, the main thing on first impression is the impact, the visual impact.
I am happy and proud to present the Handy Quilter Best of Show Award to Carol Breyer Feller for
This quilt is kind of autobiographical. I left my home in Chicago after 58 years of living in the same area of the country and relocated into an artist community in Paducah, Kentucky. And then 18 months after we moved, my husband died. A chapter of my life closed and a whole lot of new possibilities opened up. A lot of my quilts have been about birds and flight and skies, and I always thought dancing might feel like flying.
I'm very pleased to announce Hollis Chatelaine.
What's so wonderful about this piece is so many people have come up to me and said, is that in Louisiana, or is that in Georgia, or is that in Florida, or is that in South Carolina? Throughout the whole southern eastern area of the United States, we have so many wetlands and so many marshes, and so I think it touches us all, and we all need to work very hard to protect them.
I don't have a quilt in this year's show. I run my life through intuition, and my intuition said to just give it a little bit of a break. But I've got one, I actually had one done, but I decided not to do it this year. I'm going to save it for the right time. Probably not next year, but the year after I'll probably have another quilt ready.
I was actually working on a submission for Houston for 2009 when a medical testing procedure with my shoulder ended up giving me a septic infection. I was absolutely distraught that I wasn't able to finish the piece for the submission deadline. My name is Randall Cook, and I live in Rochester, New York. I was born in Rutland, Vermont. My childhood years were really spent working on the farm. When I was in elementary school, I had a really terrific art teacher, and I would take the assignment and just go even further with it. For example, we had to use a pine cone and some clay to create a figure. So I created the figure, and then I created the figure and put him on skis, and then I had him on skis crossing a finish line, and then I created grandstands and people in them around it, and I don't know, it just goes back a long ways that I like to make things. Well, so in addition to working my full-time job, I also have a part-time job working at a health club where I teach 6 classes a week. I teach 2 total body conditioning classes, 2 indoor cycling classes, and yoga and Pilates. Forward fold. Just on a total whim, I bought a sewing machine and a book, and that was when I started the quilting journey. The very first thing I made was a queen-size quilt. No sense in starting small and making a table runner or something. So this is the first quilt I ever made, and it's not pretty.
Oh, there, start over.
All right.
What did you do with your backing on that one?
Oh, the same as the front.
Okay.
So it really is a pretty terrible quilt. But it was where I started, and it taught me how to piece. And I can't give this away because it's so terrible. So. Originally, it was just a hobby. It was something that I did during the winter months, and when the weather was nicer, I didn't do any quilting. I was working for a company for about 5 years on software projects. At the end of 2006, that company laid me off.
read a book last night made me wanna fight to save the world and marry the girl and self-defy the fire in eyes. What if I'm too blind to see? Oh, well then too bad for me. Oh, I'd sacrifice all my life again. Why try to fight? I'll do anything to find
I had always been intrigued by Africa. I applied to Peace Corps in 1980 or 1979, and in 1980 I went to Togo, West Africa. Then, just to make things much more interesting, I met the love of my life there. I was assigned to the village where he had been living already for about 3 years. He'd ridden his bicycle down from Switzerland.
There was always a Peace Corps volunteer staying in the village there, and it just happened that the next one was Hollis, and so she moved in and in the village, not in my house directly, but we were the only two Westerners.
We were eventually married traditionally in that village. Our first child was born in a bush hospital, delivered by kerosene lamp by African midwives. I lived 2 years in Togo with the Peace Corps, and then 5 years in Burkina Faso, 3 years in Bamako, Mali, 2 years in Benin. It was in Burkina Faso where I discovered textiles and started creating quilts.
She was really interested in all the African textiles and the big pieces of cloth, and printed with all kinds of designs and colors. And she used to go to the factories, and they had the reject ones they were printing. Hollis would buy the kilos and bring tons of it at home because it was very cheap to buy.
Never really wanted my husband to know how much I was buying. I remember one time I went and I came back with 80 kilos. I wanted to wash it all before I put it away. And then after I had sorted it all into piles by colors, our guard comes running upstairs going, "Madame, Madame, he's home, he's home." Because he used to go away for 3 days at a time, go into the bush, and that's when I would go and buy my fabric and wash it. I just pulled the door shut and locked it. I accumulated a huge amount of fabric. When we actually moved back to the United States and we put all the fabric into a container, it filled 1/3 of a container.
And little by little, she was teaching some of the African ladies that we knew, and how to sew and how to quilt.
And then I came to the United States in 1993 after writing a letter to Carol Breyer Feller because I had seen a picture of one of her quilts on the cover of a magazine that one of the American Embassy women in Ouagadougou had with her.
Dear Carol, I got your letter dated November 4th yesterday. It was handwritten and it said, "My name is Hala Chatelaine and I live in Mali, West Africa." She was asking for advice on making art quilts.
I asked her to teach me to sew by correspondence. That's not really realistic.
I just didn't know what kind of advice to give.
And she had no idea what type of work I did. She didn't know anything about me. She only knew I came from Mali, and she had to go look it up on a map.
But I kept the card, and it kept working its way to the top of my to-do pile.
Carol did not respond to my original correspondence because, well, first and foremost, and don't tell Carol this, is that she's not a really good correspondent. Tried to get hold of her, and I eventually came to the United States and called her, and she told me to come and take a class, so I took that class.
But it was very clear after talking with her for a while that she wasn't an artist wannabe. I mean, she had formal art training and she wanted to work in fabric and needed some help with the fabric techniques.
Like how to sew. So Carol taught me her very well-known way that is way to sew that is half piecing and half applique.
This was her very first quilting class ever.
I arrived there
scared to death, intimidated by all of these people, and Carol was so nice to me that I just wanted to follow her around and be protected by her because I didn't know where I was going, what I was doing.
I would love to tell you that I taught Hala Chatelaine how to draw. I just taught her how to use her sewing machine.
I don't think that a lot of people realize that Carol Breyer Fallard had never won Best of Show in Houston. I think that everybody assumed that it had already happened.
I think I came out of the womb being an artist. I don't remember a time when I didn't draw and make things with my hands. When I was a very little girl, my parents would keep me quiet in church by giving me a pencil and a pad of paper to draw. It's just who I was from the day I was born. I'm a professional artist. My medium is the quilt and fabric. This is my stash. I think I have enough fabric for the rest of my life. This is also where I store my quilts. But the first 5 shelves on this side are fabric that I have hand dyed and hand painted myself, and then the last 3 shelves up to the ceiling are commercial fabric. And so these are commercial fabrics, but they're based on my original hand painted pieces. This sketch. When I start making a quilt design, I have a whole file folder full of little pencil sketches that I've made over the years. And, unless I have a specific idea in my head that day, I go through my file folder of pencil sketches and pick the one that's speaking to me that day. I can change all of these gradations. I mean, the possibilities are unlimited. It's kind of the ultimate power trip.
She's known for brilliant colors in her quilts, and she's also very much involved with technology in her quilts.
Right.
A lot of digital manipulation and photography and
I'd say that she has led the way with that.
It's a watchmaker quilt. And I mean, it was just a really fun piece to make, and it was full of nice memories of my father. And I inherited the little 12-drawer cabinet that housed my dad's watch parts and for his watch business. And I never cleaned out the drawers. They still have the watch parts in them. I just couldn't bear to clean them out. I think they're just so fascinating. They're almost like jewels, these little sparkly parts, and every drawer is like a little composition. I mean, look at this one. It's squares and rectangles and circles and a spiral. What's not to love here? And the quilt is called Watch Master. I was thinking of, well, It's About Time, not good, or Inside Daddy's Drawers. And then I thought, no, that's not going to be a good title. So it ended up being called Watch Master. I have these labeled A, are all the ones on one side of this sort of pod shape, and the B's are on the other side. The fabric is going to go on the freezer paper. I just cut them out so that they have about a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. These are the first 2 templates I would join together in this pod shape. Turning over that edge so that the fold is exactly along the edge of the freezer paper. So these 2 pieces are going to go together, and this is where I use a light box. It's easier to line it up on the light box. You can see right through the fabric, and what I'm aiming for here is to have the seam allowances overlapped and the edge of the paper just abutted. I run a little bead of glue along the folded over edge, just enough to hold it together until I can sew it. The reality of being in the art business is I also need to earn a living, and after 350 people have asked me for a pattern for something, I finally figured out that if I made the pattern, they would give me money and I could manage to keep making quilts instead of going out and getting a real job. I flew as a flight attendant for 28 years for United Airlines and traveled all over the world. It was easy to carry things like knitting and embroidery with me, whereas painting would be difficult to carry around. I discovered quilt shops and quilt guilds and the whole quilting subculture, and my life changed.
There are over 21 million Americans quilting. There is a lot of tension between the traditional quilters and the art quilters, and it's been going on for years.
There are quilters who are die-hard traditionalists, and they define a quilt by the handwork.
I think there should be some respect given to the traditional methods that people use to create beautiful works of art. And when they're becoming outnumbered by art quilts, then I get a little defensive about my work.
You'd never think about taking a great work of art and laying it on a bed where your cat's jumping on it. You know, you wouldn't do that with a piece of art. So why people always associate art quilts with bed quilts is you know, something that is kind of a pet peeve of mine.
Strict classical quilters, they get riled up about art quilts.
I'm intimidated by the art quilts when we go to the quilt show. Because they are artists.
When I think of quilt, I think of playing under the quilt rack when my mother and grandmother had people over to quilt. And to me, that's what quilting is.
I'm a quilter who came to quilting from sewing, not as an art form. I think if you look at the art quilts that we see today, they're artists who have discovered fabric as their medium.
I agree.
And I'm not an artist, I'm a quilter, I'm a sewer.
And I would sort of hate to see that they just become divided camps.
We need the traditionalists to stay and remind us where our craft came from and what it's doing. I think we need the artists who want to come in and say, I want to do something different. Let me see what I can do with it.
I didn't actually start painting quilts until I moved back to the United States in 1996. So I taught myself to paint with the dyes, and eventually one thing led to another, and that's how I got to the work that I'm doing now. When I first started painting quilts, I had never been to a large quilt show. I didn't know what people were putting into quilt shows, so I didn't know that I was doing something different. The first quilt that was ever accepted into a show, a painted quilt, everybody thought it was appliqued. And they were just amazed at how good my stitches were, because you couldn't see them, because there weren't any.
I can remember walking by Hollis's quilts from probably the first time she started showing them, and hearing other spectators looking at her quilts saying, well, what would you do with that? That's not going to work on a bed. And I just looked at them and thought, yes, that's correct. You've missed the point. This is art. It goes on a wall.
She came along and won Best of Show at the International Quilt Festival here in Houston in 2004 for a painted quilt.
I dreamed Precious Water in the year 2000, and it is about the worldwide water situation. I dreamed it in yellow, and in the dream I saw images of how we use water from around the world. There's this idea that it's kind of like cheating if you paint a quilt. So I never thought a painted quilt could win Best of Show. It's just a quilt, in my opinion, but it's just not a traditional quilt. So I was surprised that it won Best of Show, but I was certainly happy. And I know it was controversial, but it's like Dolly Parton says, it's better if they say something negative about you than nothing at all.
As far as this painting pictures with fabric, it's just new to traditionalists, and I think it's just going to take us a while to accept that art form.
She does take quilting in a different direction pictorially, because the traditional quilt vernacular is not pictorial, it's very geometric.
I would not even be interested in a painted quilt.
I was very intrigued by the work of Hollis Shetland.
How I met Randy was, Randy wrote to me.
That was when I had just lost my job and I was having some time on my hands, and I wanted to learn to dye paint. And you are the leader in that particular arena. So I bought a ticket and flew to California to take your week-long dye painting and quilting class. And that was when we met.
Right.
I loved it. I was hooked. When I came back from that class, I wanted to make more pieces. I was teaching at the gym all the time, and I was working with bodies. It just was a natural fit for me to then do artwork that was using the human body as well. I Remain was the first piece that I did after learning to dye paint. The piece was about my having lost my job and continuing along life's path, even if there's stuff that comes up that's unexpected. And I got into the International Quilt Association show in Houston, and I went to my very first ever national quilt show to see my piece hanging there.
I know that I've run into people in Houston, you know, they came up to me and said, "Oh man, did you see the guy with the naked butt over there?" Things like that. And that tells me that they're not understanding what Randy's trying to say.
He could paint a picture on a different canvas and hang it on the wall. I don't think it's anything I would want to lay under.
It's hard asking French people who live with naked statues every day in their cities. It's part of our life. There's always going to be someone who's not going to care for it. So that's what makes the world spin, right?
If you've got a new grandbaby, you can't wrap them up in a quilt like that.
It was a little shocking, I think, for people to see this giant, I mean, it's 81 inches tall, and it's this giant red guy with really perky buns. And people were just flocking to see the quilt. It was kind of funny. People either flocked to see it, or people would walk down the aisle and they'd, okay, I'm not looking at that.
The show opened and we came down and there were all these ladies just looking at this quilt, and you know, because it was a naked man in the rear. And you remember those ladies who, when they realized it was your quilt, they said, "Is that you?"
Right.
Self-portrait.
Would you turn around, Randy? We'd like to see.
They wanted to turn around.
So Randy, if he had to bend down, he bent down like this.
Yes, I kind of. From the reaction everyone was getting, you would think that it was the first time that they'd ever seen a nude depicted in a textile piece.
Well, we have seen nudes through the years.
You know, Genevieve Attaché from France has done some beautiful women nudes. You don't see as many men nudes, but there's no reason that you shouldn't.
It might have got a few chuckles, it might have got a few oh my's, but in the end, I mean, nude artwork has been around for a long time, so why shouldn't it be in quilting as well?
As far as it shocking anybody, I don't think it shocks them. No. I mean, most of the quilters have probably seen a nude behind before, you know, male or female, and I don't believe it's going to really be that stunning to them.
No, I think people were more surprised when they walked around the corner at an aisle in the quilt show and saw a greater than life-size bear facing them than they were when they saw one of Randall's quilts. So I think quilters are very accepting.
We believe that the quilts are art, and art doesn't need to be censored.
I Remain ended up being in an article on shocking quilts.
All the quilts that were in that issue, that March issue of Mark Lipinski's Quilter's Home, were considered shocking quilts. I opened it up and I looked at these quilts in there and I thought, oh, damn, these aren't so shocking at all. So I said to my boss, you know, why don't we put it in plastic? That way, if everybody wants to see it, then they have to buy the magazine.
I couldn't believe that it was being picked up all over the place and talked about, oh, do you know what those quilters are doing? Quilters are kind of dirty now. Did you know that they were nasty? And, you know, it was being talked about on the talk shows, and we had it on NPR, and when Chelsea Handler was mentioning it.
Stores that normally carried that magazine banned that issue.
I never imagined that a machine quilted quilt would win Best of Show in a national competition.
Carol was an amazing pioneer for quilting when she won Best of Show at Paducah in 1989. And a machine quilted quilt had never won first prize. They didn't anticipate, I think, quite how upset the traditional quilting community would be. And literally within the show, there were people who were up in arms. They thought it was a sin. They thought it was cheating.
Actually, 6 months prior to that, in the Houston show, a woman named Lois Smith won Best of Show with a machine quilted quilt. But her quilt was a Christmas quilt, and it was a traditional quilt. So it kind of flew under the radar and nobody really noticed. But my quilt was an original design art quilt with a very powerful image, and it was machine quilted. And no way was that going to fly under the radar.
I just think it would be better if it was just called machine sewing instead of machine quilting. Hand quilters don't appreciate it. Machine quilting, I guess, as much as we should probably. But as I said, to me, it's fudging.
For 20 years, I came from Chicago to Paducah every year for the big quilt show. My husband and I were both done with our corporate lives, and so we decided that we were going to relocate. My husband found a beautiful farm 45 minutes from downtown Paducah that was exactly what he wanted. I moved to Kentucky in June of 2005. My husband died 18 months after we moved here. I actually moved to Paducah in the fall of 2006. I built my dream studio, residence, classroom, shop, shipping department, dye studio, everything under one roof. When we have classes here, I set up a little dormitory or quilter's hostel. This is what I plan to enter in the International Quilt Show in Houston. It's called Feathers in the Wind. It's part of my Feather Studies series. In both the feathered plumes and in the sort of sky colors in the background, I use those intersecting color and value gradations. And then it's pretty heavily quilted in a lot of different colors of thread. I have a really good time with the quilting. It's not just incidental to the top. It's not just a way to hold it together, it's really part of the design.
I'm going to show you this work in progress. It's not done. I will be entering it in Houston. This piece is a piece about liberty. He's a torchbearer, breaking chains of oppression, or however you want to think about it. I think I'm going to put these monkeys into the border. I've heard sort of a modern day reinterpretation of that Chinese saying about see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil. You know, see everything, hear everything, and speak out when you find something that isn't right. Another quilt that I'm working on is dealing with the forest, foliage, earth, and life. To me, it's also this view from the forest floor looking up at the treetops. The final composition of the piece is actually going to be a multi-piece submission. If I won at Houston, I would, I think, be blown away.
From the time that I was a little girl, I've always had very vivid dreams, and a lot of my work was based on my dreams, but always in full color. I dreamed a piece about children. There was a face of an African boy, a very, very, very large face, and from a distance you could only see his face, and as you approached, there were all of these images floating over top of him, and they were children in situations that children are in our world. There were child prostitutes, child soldiers, but then children in school, children planting and watering trees, children playing and laughing. But you only saw these images as you approached. And so this is the quilt that I'm working on right now.
I certainly hope that my quilt will be ready for the show in Houston, and I'm going to do my very best. I may not sleep a lot between now and then, but I sure hope so.
Welcome to Paducah, Quilt City, USA.
Paducah is Quilt City, USA every April. During the American Quilter Society Quilt Show and Contest, Paducah actually doubles its population. And during the quilt show, we have 30,000 visitors.
51 weeks out of the year, it's a pleasant little sleepy river town. During this week in April, it just transformed the whole town. When they call it Quilt City, USA, literally everything will be related to quilts.
Come on, ladies! I'm Queen of Stained Glass Quilts. You've been waiting to see me. We bought one yesterday. You did.
I'm wearing a crown because I am Queen of Stained Glass Quilts. I've been designing quilts that look like stained glass for 10 years. Come in here, Jester. This is my husband, Lowell. He's a custom woodworker, and he's my jester. Now, a lot of people come in and they say, oh, Queen and King. Not. He didn't design these, so he gets to be the jester. But then he's glad to be the jester. Why are you glad to be the jester?
I don't have to behave. I'm not expected to.
That's why.
Quilt Week in Paducah for me, as a business person, is like Christmas for every other retailer. The next gallery is ordinarily my classroom. We have set it up as gallery space and also retail space. We've already pre-cut a lot of yards of fabric so that people can grab it and go.
I love the border on that. Makes it very interesting.
We had almost 600 entries in this year's contest, and of those, our jury of 3, we hire 3 professional jurists, chose 387 quilts to be hung in the show.
The quilt that I have entered in the AQS show is the same one that I had at Houston this year. But, you know, I couldn't enter the quilt in Houston and not enter it in my hometown.
The 2010 Best of Show Award goes to Tribute to Tolkien by Sue McCarty from Florida, Utah.
I'm thrilled to get honorable mention and just happy to be in the show. The quilt has received a lot of exposure in the last year. Nobody doesn't know it's mine. Denise, who's staying at my house, won best, what did you win? Best pictorial large wall quilt?
First place.
Small wall quilt, first place. Yes, so we have an all-star cast staying at the Briar Patch studio. We'll be drinking to Denise at the slumber party at the Briar Patch studio tonight. Denise, our big thing.
I love you all. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We were all up for big awards in Houston.
Yeah.
And nobody knew who got what. And we're sitting around with all these people who are friends and are up for big awards. And silly me, I said, well, whoever wins Best of Show can buy dinner and go. It was a very expensive dinner, but well worth it. It was really fun.
I tell you, one for Houston this year?
I'm going to be applying to Houston this year.
Good. I'll be applying.
Are you applying to that quilt the blue one that has?
Yeah.
That's a beautiful quilt.
I'm applying, but I won't be any threat, so.
I decided to put together this exhibit
that will travel the country to museums and universities, that will have 12 of my quilts in it and 20 black and white photographs by 5 prominent photographers.
The exhibit, we named it Imagine Hope. Imagine Hope will be in Paducah in April and May of 2010.
Imagine Hope has been a dream for such a long time, that to walk into a beautiful space of the National Quilt Museum and see it all hanging, it just is wonderful. It's so nice that the photographs work together with the quilts to bring across the messages that I had hoped they would bring across.
The pictures do look bigger than I thought. This is good.
Was it worth all the work?
Yes.
If I can have your attention, we are very honored to be hosting the world premiere of the Imagine Hope exhibit with Hollis Chatelain's quilts and photography from several international photographers. She'll be doing specifically today tours of her exhibit.
There are 1.4 billion people, I believe, that do not have access to clean drinking water. And now many of the areas are just grasslands or just scrubland. And so this is called The Change. This piece is called Exodus. Genocide is a vanishing. It is making things disappear, making people disappear. And so in my dream, there was a woman. So all you need to do is pick any one of these. So we've created a quilt with the Imagine Hope logo on it, and it is in a quilt frame. And we are inviting all kinds of people to come in and add stitches to it. We're just all working together because when people work together, they can create wonderful things.
I live near the Everglades, which is one of the very endangered areas that we have in our world. And I believe that if we don't all work together, that we're going to lose it all, and our children and grandchildren won't have anything of the beauty of this earth.
The way to change the world is so many little steps, and Hollis is one of those steps, and she will reach many people.
The deadline for submitting quilts applications for the National Quilt Association show in Houston is next week. So I'm submitting a piece, a triptych piece that I've titled Tangled Timber, and then the other quilt I'm submitting is one I've called Enlightened Freedoms. In the mail today are 2 things from the International Quilt Association. I'm a little afraid of what one of them means. I'm thinking the big package means that one of my quilts got in, and the small other is the notification that one of them did not get in. But let's see. That's just what I'm assuming. So I'll be sad. This means congratulations, my entry Enlightened Freedoms has been selected as a finalist at the 2010 International Quilt Festival in Houston. And I have to mail it by August 25th. So Enlightened Freedoms is the large piece that took me a very long time to make. And here's my little ribbon to wear on my name badge as a finalist at the show. That means this must be a rejection letter for my tree piece called Tangled Timber. Let's see.
It's 102.
All right.
disconcerting sending your children off in the mail, but here we go.
We have 23 categories this year. We have art abstract, large and small, art painted surface, art people portraits and figures, art whimsical category, traditional pieced and traditional applique, computer-aided machine embroidery, merit quilting categories. I'm not sure that I just named them all, but those are some of the examples. What's going on right now is we have the next categories that are to be judged, laid out on tables. What we do with those is the judges come in and they do what we call a flip through so that they can get an overview of what's in this category.
I've judged almost all the major shows around the country, and they all generally follow the same format in that they all have usually 3 judges, which is good because you get a mix.
I've never really been into the art quilts, and I am really excited about what I'm seeing out there.
And there's more of a mix this year than I've seen in the past. There are a lot more traditional quilts than I've seen in the past.
The judges do a parade, and they'll do a keep or release.
Wow, that's a keep.
That's a keep.
I think I could release that one. What do you think?
Yeah, release.
The hold or keep stack are the ones that they think might be contenders for an award.
Yeah,
Release. Now that's pretty original. Let's
I like that. Let's keep it.
What I will be looking for in the 2010 show is what I always look for, and that is something that makes me want to look at the quilt again. Very few quilts are going to win a prize if you look at them and think, oh, been there, done that. It has to have something that makes me want to see it again. Then you begin to look at details. And the most scrutinized quilts, of course, are the first place winners because you choose your best of show out of the first place winners. And that you begin to get real nitpicky and look at details. You don't have time when you're judging a big show to go over every single quilt with a microscope in hand, pretending like you're Sherlock Holmes. But you do when you get to best of show because you know people will be really looking at that one. And sometimes it takes that to choose between quilts. You really have to get down to the nitty-gritty sometimes. People can come up to us and ask, why did you pick this or that one, but we won't tell you.
Hello? Hi, Carol. It's Crystal Batterby in Houston. I'm calling to tell you that Feathers in the Wind has won a cash award in the judge show.
Oh, wow. I am so surprised. I really didn't expect that to be one of the winners. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
The 12-step plan for quilters is what you need. The 12-step plan for quilters is what you need. Stay at home all filled with guilt or stand up tall, say I am a quilter. 12-step plan for quilters is what you need.
There
There are three aspects to festival. People can look at quilts and fabric art on display. We usually have close to 1,500 pieces of work. You can take classes from a wide variety of subjects, over 400 of those.
Our faculty numbers well over 100. So it's really like we're running a community college or a junior college for quilting.
And then also there's shopping with over 1,000 vendor booths selling everything from antique and contemporary quilts to fabric, sewing machines, antiques, crafts.
Even when I was working, I made sure my vacation was Quilt Show week, and I would spend the whole week there.
I missed one because I didn't have any vacation left. My coworkers were tired of listening about it. They agreed next year they would each donate an hour so I could have the day off and go.
The pole, make sure your pole is here.
It needs to come up on the right about a ½ an inch.
If I was going to describe the Houston show, I would say it in one word: overwhelming. There's something there for everyone. The Houston show is just incredibly inspiring to see what different people create. They're just amazing. You know, to spend 5 years making a quilt or longer just blows your mind.
I opened an antique store with my mother-in-law and hung family quilts in all the places where we could not afford to have antiques. And when I realized that the majority of the people who were coming to my antique store wanted to buy my family quilts, and Howard Hughes wouldn't have had enough money to buy a family quilt from me. There's no way, there's too much sentiment involved. Well, then I started looking into selling quilts in the store, and that led to the first quilt festival in the store, and things just grew from there.
The winners are announced on Tuesday night before festival, and on Wednesday the quilts are on display for the first time so that everyone can see the big winners.
Where's the dancing going?
I have to find it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the International Quilt Festival in our 36th year. I'd like to recognize everyone with a quilt in this show. Would you please stand and be recognized? Everyone with a quilt in this show. And anyone who has ever had a quilt in one of our shows, would you stand? And then I want you all to pat yourselves on the back, because without you, we would not have a show. We just did a survey with Quilters Newsletter, and the estimated value of the U.S. quilting market in 2010, U.S. only, is $3.58 billion. The average quilting household expenditure is $219, which is, yes, I know. I understand. It is to laugh, isn't it? Quilters spend more on their passion per year than gun, hunting, enthusiasts, golfers, or fishermen. Now, how's that?
As you enjoy the quilts in the IQA exhibit, let me encourage you to vote for the Viewer's Choice Award. That's in your hands. That is a $500 prize.
When you have a show that brings in 55,000 people in 4 days, it's kind of silly to not have your quilt be in the show if it is accepted, to have those people see it. I never really thought about what prizes would mean. They were a means to make a living for me, but the journey is the reward, and I love making them.
This is the only category that quilts get to judge with their heart. And I was so excited.
Art quilting is truly a creative process. I want to create art that people like and want to look at and want to stand in front of. I'm not sure if Houston's ready for me to win yet.
My award goes to Becky Goldsmith for Circular Momentum. And finally, we have Alice Wilhoit's choice.
It probably took 5 years for any of my quilts that I entered to win any awards at all at Houston. But I kept entering because regardless of winning awards or not winning awards, something really wonderful happened in my career every time I entered a Quilt at Houston.
And then there is a category called Art Abstract Small.
First place, Feathers in the Wind by Carol Breyer-Fallert of Paducah, Kentucky.
Made entirely with Benartex fabric.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Made entirely with Benartex fabric.
This is sponsored by Congratulations. And the awards will be presented by quilters. This is the Handy Quilter Best of Show Award. This is a $10,000 award sponsored by Handy Quilter Corporation.
So without further ado, Mystique by Sharon Schomburg. Please welcome her to the stage.
I'm in shock. I don't know what to feel. I didn't think it was possible. This quilt, the quality is much more. The quality of the work is much higher, much higher than I've ever done before. So it's very intricate. It's a white quilt with black quilting on it, which is really hard to do.
And what made you do that?
Insanity. It's insane. I don't know why I did it that way, but it worked out really well. There's also, you can actually see through the quilt, so it's put together in separate little units. It was very hard, very hard.
What was your inspiration?
I have no idea. It just needed to be made.
A lot of these women save up for the show all year. They save up vacation time and money, and then they make their trip to festival into kind of a girls' day out.
Okay, this is dry. This is the sweet.
We started doing the lemmas because of construction downtown, so ever since then we had so much fun going down in the lemmos that we've done it every year since. A lot of the different groups in BESA wear the same shirt or the same hat or whatever, so that you can find your friends when you're down on the main floor. We wear our tiaras, of course.
I'm the king, right?
The International Quilt Festival is held in the fall every year. We'll host approximately 55,000 people throughout the week and a half event. And they are very excited. Can't wait to get in. Everybody wants to be the first.
2010 International Quilt Festival Houston is now open.
Let's go.
It's been our experience that quilters are going to spend money on their quilts. You cannot stand between them and their quilts. They will find a way to do it.
Well, let me show you what our software is about. It's a quilt album for documenting the things you've made.
Well, I like to get something free. So if I'm going to spend a lot of money, I want them to give me a free, even if it's a needle, a free sewing needle. That makes me happy. So I'm looking for the great deal.
So the 8 in this was not right?
Rotate it.
That's a 9, and that's a 9.6. That's why it's not.
That's 9.5. And that's why it is.
It's too big.
Yeah, but it's squared off. It's one of the Generation 2s.
There, oh.
I would love to put you in a Generation 2 Roxanne thimble.
Everybody is really helpful. They have lots of classes, lots of vendors, people that do demos all day long just to help people quilt better. Very easy and simple, but as you can see, no matter what fabric, it'll never stick to the bottom. Would you like to know how much they cost?
I'm holed up in the husband's lounge.
while my wife is going through the quilt show.
Probably be in here for at least 2 or 3 hours today, and then I'll be back tomorrow with maybe inside, maybe not.
They're all amazing, but the subtleties in this one are really
She did
3D.
2 lines of, or 3 lines of embroidery with a hand.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Are you enjoying the show?
I am. I'm just parachuting in for a few minutes today, but I will be back. I always enjoy the show. But I advise people that they should come to the show and do it, not try to do the whole thing
Absolutely.
at once,
Yes.
because it's sensory overload. You don't have to be a quilter, you don't have to be a quilt fanatic to appreciate it. Truly, this is for people who love art, who love crafts, and who just want a pleasant place to spend a day, although it can quickly become overwhelming.
This year, International Quilt Festival broke its attendance record. We had over 60,000 quilters come to the show. And then also this year, the International Quilt Association had its first ever 3-time Best of Show winner.
The last prize winner that we'll hear from is Sharon Schomber for her beautiful quilt, Mystique.
I'm technically a sewing savant, which means I can't do anything else. That's it. This quilt, it's been in the making for about 4 years. And I just go work on it, and I get so tired of it. I just wad it up and throw it in the corner. I want to thank my husband. He actually cornered me. He goes, "You have to finish that quilt now." I wasn't wanting to finish the quilt, and he says, "No, it needs to be in Houston this year." Winning 3 times, it's such an honor, but it's never been done before. And, you know, I don't know quite what to say about it because it's so new. It's really interesting. But apparently I'm the one that keeps breaking all the rules. The top's all done on a new one, and it's ready to start quilting on it, and it is better than this one. Yeah, it's an amazing piece. It's done in all reds with the background's white again, and I'm going to be quilting it in shades of beige and golds. So I'm really excited about the new one.
It always feels wonderful to win a prize at Houston. It's a really big deal. This is a piece that I'm very fond of. It's very much in the style of some of the other work that I've done in the past, so I wasn't really thinking in terms of this as being a competition piece. I mean, I do like to exhibit my work, and where are you going to get better exposure than here?
There's a bit of a controversy in the International Quilt Festival this year because the winners, the big winners, are all very traditional quilts. There's a thinking that the Paducah show is more traditional, and so the Houston show is supposed to be more art quilty, and so then if you have a situation like this where so many of the winners, virtually all the winners, are traditional, that gets people grousing.
Hopefully next year we're back to kind of a balance between traditional and non-traditional. I have a brand new quilt that I made over the summer. It's called Checks and Balances, and it is a little bit different than some of the other quilts I've made. It has recognizable figures in them. It's about creating balance in your life, which is kind of where I am. This will probably be in some of the shows and competitions next year.
My general impression was that there were a lot of traditional quilts that were winning some of the prizes. I also noticed that there seemed to be a theme in the quilts that won, to have butterflies.
And the first place award goes to Butterfly Dance. Wings and feathers. I think we have a theme here.
So by the time we got to the 3rd or 4th quilt that had butterflies in it, I'm like, there's a pattern here. My piece this year didn't win anything, not even an honorable mention. But I was feeling really disappointed that people were just walking by my quilt. I was very busy with a number of other activities in the last couple of days and was not able to get to my quilt. Today, I was able to actually get some perspective from people who really did like it.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. I don't know if you remember us, but we did take your exercise class, or the stretching class.
I think the classes are really, needed and good. Well, this is my piece that's in this year's show.
Yes, we noticed it from the other one.
It is. It's well. You probably remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
This. Yeah. Oh.
It is the one.
Yeah.
We took pictures of you that year and your quilt.
I love all the thread work on this.
Actually, let me pull this. Let me pull this out because. See how?
Oh yes, you can see the difference.
See?
Yes.
I mean,
absolutely.
when you have light on it, this is amazing, you know, and then it doesn't pop at all when it's flat against that that wall.
And then the
had a
extra
phoenix.
thread. Yes.
So there's a phoenix, and there are these
Monkeys.
If I'm able to finish some quality work in time for next year's Houston submission deadline, I certainly am going to submit to Houston. But I am a little afraid that that may not happen, so no promises.
I'm as mystified as everybody else about why Hollis's quilt didn't receive the recognition. I mean, I was just positive that she would be the three-time Best of Show winner.
Innocence is not, it's not about being a technically wonderful quilt as much as about the emotion, I think, of what you feel when you see it.
Yeah, why didn't it win an award was my question to my friend. It is, it's very remarkable, very talented.
This year it didn't win any prizes, but this was a year that they liked the other quilts better, and I'm really happy that people were able to see Innocence, and now it will join the rest of the quilts in Imagine Hope.
It's a nonprofit organization, and the goal of it is to teach them, and we are working to have an educational program.
Attention, please, attendees. The winner of the Viewer's Choice Award in the International Quilt Association Judge Show is Innocence by Hollis Shadoway.
Thank you.
This is one of my favorite quilts. It is my favorite quilt, and it just means so much to me that other people liked it enough that they would vote for it for Viewer's Choice. So, anyway.
A child drinking here, a child carrying wood on her head here.
On a bed my daddy built lies a bright patchwork quilt that his mother's grandma stitched long
I
ago.
assembled the center component and I took it to work. That's my sump pump going off. So I'll wait for the noise to completely stop.
And I'd have to say, I guess Grandma loved that quilt the best, but every generation held it dear. Grandma's patchwork quilt was 100 years old when she first pulled it over me to keep me from the cold. She said the fabric of our family is stitched within these folds. I remember.
I have synesthesia, which is a condition where your senses have mixed. So color not only has color, it has a smell and it has a texture. The absolute worst color, if you want to know that, is that mossy, like swamp green. That, oh man, I have to go away from that one. Yuck! It makes my throat gag.
Here's my mama's little cape. There's a checkered kitchen drape and that dark patch. Well, my grandma didn't say. She said the quilt looks just the same as when I saw it on the frame. Somehow the colors never disappear, and in the darkest night it seems to cast a little light, and somehow it's gotten warmer through the year.
I really appreciate that I have this big studio. And I really appreciate that my husband moved out so I can take over the living room and half of the garage.
From the cold, she said the fabric of our family is stitched within these folds. I remember all the stories that she told.
Built a house, built a brand new house that I confiscated the biggest bedroom that was not the master bedroom for me. and it has a huge walk-in closet that now holds my entire stash, and it's just fabulous in there.
When my grandma's time drew near, we asked her through our tears if she'd take that quilt.
You don't think of her, you think of her as a rock star?
Well, I view her, I do, in a way. Not a rock star, not like Kiss or Metallica or, you know.
Well, thank you.
But more like Who. Anyways.
Like the Who?
Where I'm going, there's no sickness, cold, or fear. I'll be resting warm, I know, so keep it when I go, and I'll leave that little patch of heaven here. Grandma's patchwork quilt was 100 years old when she first pulled it over me to keep me from the cold. The fabric of our family is stitched within these folds. I remember all the stories that she told. I remember all the stories that she told. And I can't count all the memories it holds.
To fabric and beyond.
Oh,